both of you and all the participants in the webinar. And really, I'm eagerly waiting to know the exact situation of America, because it is the most affected nation in the world by COVID-19. So I'm really very eager to know that what happened in first world country, that the number of affection, the number of death, the number of situation is so worse. Just we are waiting for your valuable speech. Thank you very much. And I have a request to you. If everything is over, if we come back to our normal life, again, please come to an institution. We will be very happy to get you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. Now I would like to request our IQAC coordinator, Dr. Champa Devnath, to introduce our speaker and moderator. Dr. Champa Devnath.
Thank you. Thank you, Arnav. Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Audible.
So,
Please.
good evening. I would like to introduce our honorable speaker, Laura Ungar. Laura Ungar is the Midwest editor, correspondent, Kaiser Health News, and covers health issues out of KHN St. Louis office. She has been a journalist for nearly 3 decades, including for the Louisville Courier Journal, USA Today, the Hartford Courant in Connecticut, and the News Journal in Delaware. She has covered health issues for more than half her career, writing about the issues ranging from cancer disparities to lead in water, the largest HIV outbreak in rural America. She has won more than 50 national, regional, and local journalism awards from the organizations such as Investigative Reporters and the Editors, the Association of Healthcare Journalists, the Society of Environmental Journalists, and the National Headliner Award. She also teaches a class at the University of Missouri, editing stories by students from the United States and the India that run in St. Louis Post-Dispatch and in various Indian media. She also contributed for the Washington Post. She won awards for her coverage of health, poverty, and the environment with her impactful Pulitzer shortlisted stories on issues like water contamination, HIV or AIDS, and cancer prompting government action. While a fellowship was brought her to India more than a decade ago, she is also associated with the University of Missouri and the University of Kentucky as journalism instructor to mentor students on multimedia story projects linking USA and India. Now, I would like to introduce the honorable moderator of today's webinar, Sujoy Dhar. Sujoy Dhar is group editor of India Bloom News Service, a 24/7 news portal, www.indiabloom.com, and its news agency are India Bloom News Service. Its feature service on France World Features and the group global humanitarian news portal justartnews.com. He is presently associated as a journalism instructor with University of Missouri, teaching a spring semester in USA, pairing Indian and US students on joint journalism projects. He also speaks in several other universities in USA, the UK, and Canada. He also founded the travel and living portal www.nottingtonnext.net. He has 3 decades of experience in reporting and writing besides entrepreneurial journalism. He has traveled with the Indian Prime Minister and covered issues like nuclear energy and polar bear crisis and climate change from Europe Arctic Circle in North America. Thank you. Dr. Arnav,
Thank you,
I would like to
thank you, Dr.
request hand
Champa
over the
Devnath.
program.
Thank you, Dr. Champa Devnath. I would like to request Sujoy Dhar to moderate the program. The program, today's webinar, organized by the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Department of Physiology, IQAC, Women's Cell, Healthcare Diploma Course, UGC affiliated Healthcare Diploma Course, and I would like to request Sujoy Dhar to moderate the program, and once again welcome Laura Ungar and Sujoy Dhar. Sujoy Dhar, please.
Okay, thank you, Arnav. Thank you, Dr. Devnath. Thank you, Madam Principal, everybody, and everyone present in this webinar. It's sad that we are holding a webinar instead of a seminar, because every year Laura visits India, so we get the opportunity to have many workshops and seminars here in Calcutta, New Delhi, and many other universities. But this is a very unusual situation, very extraordinary situation, and we never thought that we'll see this day, but it has happened. And as they say, that fact is stranger than fiction, and we are actually living in time when fact is indeed stranger than fiction. And I don't want to take too much time introducing ourselves, because we have already been introduced, and I should now go straight to Laura to start today's proceedings. And we all perhaps know the figures, or many of you must have already Googled and found the figures. Is it okay? Hello.
Hello, I can hear you.
Should I continue?
Shoma Sarkar, you are requested to stop
Yes,
your
you are audible.
presentation.
Should I resume?
Yes, you continue, Sujoy Dhar.
Okay. Okay. So, Laura and everybody else here, I am sure many of you have come here prepared. And I start with Laura, like more than, I think 2.75 million infections in USA and 130,000 deaths already. And of course, many have recovered from the contagion. Now, we are every day reading everything that comes from USA, like we are covering it ourselves from India Blooms. We read all the newspapers, the websites and everything that is available online. And on our social media, people are constantly posting something or the other. So more or less, we know a little bit about the scenario in USA. And definitely it is one of the worst affected countries now. And then we all know that there is also kind of a leadership problem in USA so far combating coronavirus is concerned. So I come to that leadership and everything. You very briefly, if you can sum up what exactly is the situation now in USA in the month of end of June, early July. So what exactly is the situation now, quickly?
Yeah, actually, I am working. I just had a story come out yesterday, a national story. And between the 2 weeks that we finished the first draft and the time that it came out,
we had to update the numbers of cases and deaths. And we were astonished at how much the cases and deaths rose even in that amount of time. So in 2 weeks, I believe the cases were something like 2.1 million when we first wrote the first draft. And then when it came out yesterday, it was 2.6 million cases. So that's within 2 weeks, we had, 500,000 cases. And then deaths also, we saw the deaths go up from about 115,000 to 130,000. So it's really going up right now. We're sort of having a nationwide surge. And actually, some of the highest case rates that we've ever had have been in the last few days. So we are really seeing a resurgence as a lot of states that weren't hard hit at the beginning. So at first, you probably knew that that New York was very hard hit. New York, Connecticut, the northeast portion of the U.S., and then California and Washington State. Those were some of the early ones. But now you're seeing more of the western and midwestern places, like Texas has huge increases lately. Arizona, Florida. Some of these are really seeing very large spikes right now. And everyone's very concerned about places like where I am located right now, which is I'm in Kentucky, and I usually would be working in Missouri, and both of those places are seeing increases right now. So that's kind of a short way, but really we're all worried about a surge right now.
Okay, so I think there are two things. One is the way a government is handling a crisis, that is one. And we can definitely put our blame on the government everywhere, any country, not only just USA. I'm coming to USA later on. But the other side of this pandemic, the way to cope with this pandemic is also the people. Okay. And you keep coming to India, so you have very fair idea about India, like anybody else, any of the speakers here. And you have traveled across India, you know the population density and everything. And I think, we should not be complacent, but then compared to many Western countries, we perhaps did little better. I mean, don't just go by the number of infections, but if you go by the number of deaths and the way it has been managed in a country like India with so much of poverty, and we still have illiterate people. So, whereas in USA, we always thought, because it's a speak and span country, like health issues are very important in Western countries, in advanced countries, and yet we see there's a total lack of, I would say, not awareness, but responsibility on part of many Americans in following the protocol, in following the rules, wearing masks or like a face gear, or like washing hands, anything. Why do you think people are so careless in a country like USA? Why? Because we often look up to countries like USA.
I think there are several reasons for that. So I think one thing is that our country is very much centered on individual freedoms. And so I think people take it into their minds that they're going to do what they want to do. They're not necessarily going to listen to any authority figure who's telling them to do anything. So I think that's part of it. I also think that we have a situation where our leadership, and I don't mean just from the president, but our governors, local leaders, and everybody has politicized the whole pandemic, and has, say there's a Republican governor who refuses to wear a mask or something like that, or Trump doesn't want to wear a mask. So people who follow them or who believe in what they're saying will think, I'm not wearing a mask either. No one can make me wear a mask. So that's one thing that I think we have this kind of independent streak, and we also are responding to the politicization of this. So that's something. I also think there is a reluctance on the part of some young people to take it very seriously because they, they're not getting very sick for the most part. The young people are, if they get it, they're getting mild cases, and they're just, not taking the seriousness of it. So a lot of folks are going to bars and things like that, and just spreading it around and spreading it to older people in the community, but maybe not even knowing that they're doing that. So I think there's a lot of different factors coming in play here, but a lot of it does have to do with sort of our national character and the fact that we're just very independent and we're not super community minded in general. I think as a culture, we are very independent and individualistic, and we believe very strongly in, the other thing is capitalism. So because of the politics and the politicization of what's going on, I think people are really pitting livelihood against safety, because that's what the politicians are saying. They're saying, if you don't go out to the store and don't spend your money, our economy will collapse. So you need to go out and you need to, don't worry about the pandemic very much because we have to get out there and do our work and go shopping and things like that. And people believe that, that they think, well, our economy is very important. We need to just be out there, shoring up our economy and working. And, so I think all of those things kind of fall into it. But when you look into countries that have done a much better job explaining the coronavirus, you see that there is a lot of trust in the government, number one, and people kind of doing something for the collective good and realizing, okay, I'm going to sacrifice for a little while, on the assumption that I can help this larger group. And the sad thing is that, when you do sacrifice, I guess it's a good thing. When you sacrifice, you do end up getting rid of the virus sooner and containing it sooner. So, we're sort of hurting ourselves by having this attitude.
Okay. Hello. Yeah. So one more thing, we see WHO, which is a UN body, of course, and we know the controversy surrounding WHO, and it's widely believed worldwide now that it acted almost like a handmaiden of China, and it has lost its credibility to a large extent. But then we still can't ignore an organization like WHO, and USA kind of walked out of it and stopped funding. So how do you see this, the response from USA? Because a lot of other things came into play for this, I think. One is definitely geopolitics. Another thing is definitely your ongoing tussle with China, and add to that coronavirus, and then your president and your politicians are also answerable to people for everything. So how do you see USA's walking out of WHO? How much difference does it make?
I think it makes a big difference, just as a health reporter, because I speak with a lot of people who deal with the WHO, who see what WHO does, and they're very alarmed about this. They really believe that the U.S. should have continued funding WHO, should be a part of WHO. And I understand that the U.S. provides about 1/5 of the funding for the WHO. So that's could be a big blow to the organization. I think certainly the scientists and doctors here are very alarmed by this, but there are definitely folks who agree with Trump, that this, because they do think that the WHO is somehow in cahoots with China, and then they should be cut off from the U.S. But certainly, I would say the vast majority of scientists and doctors are very upset by this turn of events, and also they believe that really the people who will get hurt are the people in the developing world. Because the WHO in many ways, helps a lot in places, Africa and, certainly India as well. So I think, you're suffering more from this decision than we are, as a country. I mean, we have plenty, we're suffering in many, many other ways.
Yeah.
Certainly, we've muzzled our own centers for disease control.
Yeah, because what we see is this is a pandemic, okay? So this is global, and this is actually no boundaries, and that has happened in case of coronavirus. It may have started from China, but then it spread quickly everywhere in the world. Okay, so walking out of WHO because of definitely it's the influence of China on WHO and everything, like the lead alarm and whatever. Because we also reported a lot, we blasted them a lot, but at the same time, it is an organization we still kind of have one of its kind. So you think that the fight that USA kind of what do I say? USA kind of abandoned its global role in fighting this pandemic by walking out of it instead of staying in it and fighting.
Yes, I definitely think that our leadership right now is very much focused on America. I mean, I'm sure you all have heard, Trump talks about America first, and, that's his philosophy. And I think this is an example of him showing that, but, on the other hand, America is suffering, worse than any other place as far as suffering and dying from the disease. So really we're not first if you think about it that way. But certainly I would say this has not shown us to be globally minded. We are not striking out and helping the world deal with this or seeing this in a global way as a certainly as leadership. I mean, I personally tend to absolutely think we're all in this together. We all need to depend on each other. We are all suffering together. And if one country has it, then everybody is at risk, because we're all one plane ride away from getting the next, like, let's say we got a vaccine tomorrow and we vaccinated only people in wealthy countries. Well, that's not going to work. It's going to soon be all over the place again because we're all connected. It's a very global economy, without travel, everything. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, coming back to the situation in USA, first you shut down, and then you reopened, and then there is this huge spike in the coronavirus cases. I heard many of your top politicians from various parts of USA actually open up as soon as possible. I hear like maybe a governor or somebody espousing that the casinos should open and things like that. And now there's a spike. And we hear, if I'm not wrong, if we hear that you are again kind of deciding to close down or shut down. So what exactly is the scenario regarding shutting down and opening up and reopening and shutting again? So what exactly is happening there? Or is it happening all over USA or in parts?
It's happening in parts, and I think part of our difficulty in dealing with this is that we have 50 different states, which are almost like little countries. and they're all following their own thing. And there's no kind of national guidance that everyone is going by, really. I mean, the US CDC is a little bit of a guideline, but not everyone is following that. So what's happening is, so gradually we shut down starting in like late March into April, and then gradually various states shut down, but it was all not all at the same time. So, you know, one state might be totally open, the other is closed, and you could go from one state to another. And then gradually they all shut down, but in different degrees. So in some places you might be able to, you know, go out to a store, but in another state you can't go to a store. You can only go to, you know, a hospital or something. So it was just very different rules by state, which was very confusing. And yeah, so that, and then we started to see the surge, and now some of the places with the worst surges, like Texas. Texas just recently announced that they're going to reclose some stuff that they opened. So they had closed down, then they opened up again, and they open in phases. So like it's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and some of them are now like going back to the previous phase because they're finding that when they open bars, more cases happen, so they have to close the bars. But it very much varies by state. So that's not going to help very much, because again, you can just cross the border to another state and have a completely different rule. So there's no uniformity.
Okay, so I come to another part of this contagion. Like when somebody learns that he or she has got the infection and there are symptoms, I'm not talking about asymptomatic people, but when there are symptoms, what exactly happens in USA? I'll come to all other questions to you, and there are some questions already maybe, but you just explain to us briefly what exactly happens. Like if today you know that you have got it and you are showing symptoms, what will you do and what the government will do to you? Because there are a lot of things happening here. Maybe you have heard about it, horror stories and things, but then things are a little stable perhaps now. What is happening in USA?
Well, let me start with what was happening at first versus what's happening now, because it's very different now.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the pandemic, nobody could get a test.
Okay.
I mean, it was nearly impossible to get one. So even if you had a very bad cough and had every symptom, you probably couldn't get a test, and people didn't know whether to send you to the hospital or to the doctor or to some government, health department. They didn't know what to do. So that was happening at first. And then, so that created all sorts of crazy things where, you know, there was lots of spread because people couldn't get a test. They didn't know for sure whether they were sick. They didn't know what to do. Nobody was telling them what to do. So that was how it was then. Now, right now, if I got it today, we have a lot of testing. In fact, my husband just had a test and he's negative, but we have drive-through testing. So even if you don't have symptoms, but if I did have symptoms, certainly I would feel like, okay, I need to get a test. So I could go to the drive-through testing site at a hospital or elsewhere. Like they even have them in grocery stores now. So you could go and you get it, and then if I was positive, then the government health department would say, okay, you need to isolate in your house. You can't come out, and then for 14 days or until you have another test that says you're okay. And so that's how it works now. And there have been some people who have gone against this and like said, I'm not going to isolate, I'm going out. And they have gotten cited and had police outside their house and things like that. So,
okay.
But anyway, that's what happens right now.
Okay. So, and the tests that you, the tests are like chargeable, they are free, or you have to pay for those tests?
Okay, they're free to us. They are covered by federal money, and we don't have to have our insurance, I think, pays some as well, but we don't have to pay what we call cost sharing. So usually, if my insurance paid for some procedure that I got, I might have to pay $50, but with this, I don't have to pay. So my insurance and the federal government are working together to pay for it, and I don't have to pay anything personally.
Okay. Okay, so you don't have to pay anything personally. One more thing, like you all know, like we all know, like your government at one point was like crazy about having hydroxychloroquine, and then like we all know about it, and then WHO definitely advised against using it. And now we hear about remdesivir, okay? And so what exactly is the treatment protocol right now? Like, how are they treating the patients?
They are finding it. I was actually just reading about this morning. They are finding it at an earlier stage because there's more testing available. So they are treating people with the remdesivir a little bit earlier, which is helping. And they've also realized some things that they didn't know at first, like the need to put patients on their belly, basically. That's something they didn't know for a month or so. So I think now they know more stuff. I also feel like more younger people are getting it now. So because of that, they're doing better. Because, you know, if you're 85 and you already have a lot of health problems and you're very old, that you're going to have a worse course. So if you're younger, you're going to do better just naturally because your body is stronger. So I think that's happening too. And that's making things a little better. So we do have fewer deaths than we did at the beginning. But there are very few, there is a lot of concern that with our high case rates, you know, our case rates our daily case rates are huge. Like on the 30th, we had 43,644 cases in one day. You know, in a country a third of the size of yours. So that tells you the situation, and I think people just think, you know, in a month we're going to see a lot of deaths.
Okay, so can you also briefly tell us about the hospital infrastructure in USA? Because we have this problem in India, you know, and we have such a huge population. And in USA, what is the hospital infrastructure at the moment, healthcare infrastructure at the moment to cope with such a large of COVID-19 cases? They are in millions.
Yes, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, you went out for a minute. So it's getting better in some areas. Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, you can continue, I think.
Oh, okay. So in some states the situation is fine. We have enough beds, and there are definitely you know, hospitals that could take you, and you could be you know, get in there and get treated. In my state where I am right now, Kentucky, we have enough beds. If I was sick tomorrow, I could get a hospital bed without a problem.
Okay.
But if I lived in Texas, Texas is having a lot of trouble right now. There's a lot of concern that they are actually going to run out of ICU beds.
Okay.
So again, it's a very much of a state by state issue, and wherever you're seeing a surge, like it might even be one town. If you're seeing you know, one city is seeing a huge surge, that hospitals might be overrun, and then another hospital has plenty of room. So it really depends. But for the most part, I would say, except for the very hard hit regions, we do have enough beds right now.
Okay, and this treatment, as you said, is if hospitalized, owned by both insurance and together. or you have to pay from your pocket as well?
Remdesivir, yes. And really any of the treatment that you might get, just, like treatment to help you feel better. Yeah, that would happen in the hospital. If you're sick enough to be hospitalized, your insurance,
Yeah.
would cover that if you had insurance.
Okay.
There are definitely Americans
Okay.
who do not have insurance, or who have state insurance, and so that's very costly for them and for the government. So that's another problem we have, and then we have a huge unemployment issue right now. So that's also causing people to lose their insurance. So that's another problem, and I know we haven't talked much about the unemployment, but that is also just a gigantic problem right now.
Yeah, definitely. I come to that as well, like on unemployment. Since you mentioned it just now, what is the unemployment situation right now in USA, and how the people are coping with that?
So again, it varies widely by state, but one of the numbers that I heard for the state of Kentucky is that at one point in the pandemic, 40%, that's 40%, were unemployed.
That's huge.
It's huge. So, and then right now in the whole United States, it's unemployment is 11.1%. And back in April, it was 14.7%. But that does not count people who have stopped looking for jobs. So that's just the people who lost jobs recently and are looking for a job. There are vast numbers, millions and millions of people who just have given up looking for a job. And so that doesn't count them. But still, that's just a gigantic proportion. I mean, it's almost the levels of the Great Depression.
Okay.
So it's very, very scary. And especially in a place like Kentucky, where, 4 out of 10 people don't have a job, which means that, homelessness is going to go up. All of the problems around poverty, people are going to need all sorts of free care and free food, and, all of that stuff is going to happen because, we had some immediate aid where people were given some money, like checks, basically, from the government to last a little while, but those are pretty much ending. Or we got one check, like every American adult who pays taxes got a $1,200 check. But that was just a one-time thing. So, if this goes on for a year, we got one $1,200 check, which is not going to keep people alive very long. So, yeah.
Okay. I come to vaccine at the end of our discussion. Tell me one thing first. Like US, at the moment, as you said, like remdesivir is one used for treatment. And then we hear that if there is a vaccine, if there something is available, US will get the access to that first. Okay. We even heard a company like Sanofi, I think in France, saying that US will get the access to it first. But then this is a pandemic, right? This is a global thing. So what exactly do you think is going to happen when you have a vaccine? What do you think, how do you think US is going to react to that? And what exactly it's going to do, you think?
Well, I think there are a few issues that will come up with that. Number one, I think this is a huge, just getting the vaccine to as many people as would need it is just like an unprecedented feat. So a company has to create more vaccine than they've ever created in the world, ever. So that is just like a gigantic hurdle to get over in the first place. So when they come up with a vaccine and test it, which they're trying to do very quickly, because previously the quickest they've ever gotten a vaccine from idea to vaccine is 4 years. So, and they're trying to do this within 18 months. That would be the fastest they've ever done it ever. And in the US, we have a lot of regulatory hurdles. So you have to have all different types of clinical trials. And then once you're done with that and you show that it works and it's safe and it's not going to kill anybody, then you have to create it. So you have to make like billions of this thing. And I don't think there's any place in the world right now that is could instantly make that much vaccine. So they're trying to think about the infrastructure right now all over the world and see if they can use other types of factories as vaccine making factories and things like that. But these are all hurdles that we're going to have to get over. Also, and then even if everything went perfectly, we have this very it's a small movement, but it's a growing movement, and it's anti-vaxxers. I don't know if you've heard of that.
What?
But they're people anti-vaxxers.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's people who don't believe in vaccines.
Okay.
They think that they're going to hurt them. They think that vaccines cause autism.
Okay.
They're very concerned about the government giving vaccines, etc. And so they have come out very loudly about this, and that they're saying Bill Gates is trying to take over and all this kind of stuff. And this has been, social media has amplified this, so it's actually becoming like less of a fringe thing, and more people are subscribing to it.
Yeah.
So that's a concern in the
Because we see people in USA actually saying we have a right to breathe, and we will breathe the way we want to breathe and not wear a mask.
Yes.
So you have all, and in the middle you had this total chaos in USA and the protests over this racism and everything. And that part, I don't know, like if that also kind of acted in spiking the numbers, led to a spike in numbers. But there are like 40,000 infections a day. There are often days when you have 40,000 new infections. So what are the healthcare professionals they are saying? When do you see flattening of the curve or what?
I mean, right now they are saying we better be careful and we better take more action, and we need to double down on things like wearing masks and social home when we can. A lot of even some politicians are starting to say that we're opening up too fast, that we need to kind of pull back a little bit and not open up so many things, especially indoor things. That seems to be a real issue, that indoor restaurants, indoor bars, indoor sporting events are a problem. But you mentioned the protests, and actually they have not found a lot of cases linked to the protests. And the thought is that that's because they're outside. So I think it really helps to be outside as far as not spreading it, whereas they have had a lot of big, super spreader kind of events with churches and fires and things like that. So indoor things.
Okay. So Laura, like we'll have, I think there are some questions. Before that,
Sure.
if you have to sum up the scenario in USA now and what you see in the next like 3 months, maybe till October, what is the scenario now? How depressing or how hopeful or depressed you are about the scenario now? And what do you think about the future? I mean, the near future, which is like the next 3 months or so, 3-4 months. Just if you can share something that which you think is going to happen or happening now and going to happen, how do you explain it?
Yeah, I think what will start happening is we will all start pulling back a little bit more, because I'm already seeing that happen even in places like Texas and Florida, where the governors do not want to. They would love to keep the economy open, but they're being forced to pull things back because of the spikes. And so if they are willing to do it, they are pushed to the brink. So I think that's going to happen even more in places that where the governors are more amenable to keeping people safe. So I think we'll see more of that. I think we're going to see a spike throughout the nation, and we're going to see a second wave. Everyone talks about a second wave coming in the fall. So that's another thing we have to worry about, and especially as people in the United States start staying inside more, because it will start getting colder, and people will stay inside and then spread it more. I think businesses will stay closed longer than they thought they would. So like my business, for example, like we were saying that we would come back quote end of the summer, but now latest thing I've heard is we have no idea, and we just did a survey, an employee survey, with like what would we be okay with staying home and for the foreseeable future, so I kind of think that, and a lot of news organizations actually, I think the New York Times and Post have said at least late fall. In some places are saying into 2021, people will work from home. So that's what I see in the immediate future. And I guess if I had to look down the road, I don't think we're going to all get out of this until we all start following, putting health first as the whole world, and thinking of each other. And until we do that, we're just going to stay in this mess. That's my opinion.
And one more question I forgot to ask you this question is, a lot of students from India travel to USA for higher studies, or even undergrads or whatever, PhD students. And I mean, there's a pause now, even the visa offices are closed here. So when do you think there will be a normalization of the situation, so that there again can be like these travels for education? What do you think? Like, when do you see, like maybe next year, March or something?
I don't know. It might be longer than that, just because university, I mean, the university that my daughter will be going to is going to be on campus, but they are saying, we could pull back in the middle of the year if something happens, and they're actually ending the semester early and starting early so that there's less indoor time and less time to spread with other people. And that's just, students in America.
Yeah.
There were some students at University of Missouri who were concerned about this, who were in Missouri from, this one student was from China, I recall, and she was very concerned that she might not be able to come back at all because of visa restrictions and things. And I think, Europe and Canada and a lot of places don't want Americans there. Because, we have a lot of disease. So, and I understand that. So, and I think people there might be concerned about coming here, because there's more, they can get,
So I mean, suddenly USA is not that lucrative a destination for anybody.
Right. And there are some universities, like the whole California state system, it's all online. So they are just not even having any in-person classes at all. And so if you were coming from abroad, you might as well be at home. Because they're not open.
Okay. Now, I think there are a few questions. I can see questions on the status of vaccine development and such things. So I would ask the organizers to put forward those questions to you so that you can answer them.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Sujoy. I would like to request Professor Shoma Mujumdar to conduct the question and answer session. Professor Shoma Mujumdar.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes.
Yes, you are audible.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Banerjee. And first of all, thank you, Ms. Laura Ungar. It was wonderful listening to you. And thank you, Mr. Sujoy Dhar. It was an amazing moderation session. So with your permission, I would like to read out the questions from the chat box if you like. The first question is for,
Sure.
okay. The first question is from Kamalesh Dash. He's asking, as a health journalist, if you have any idea when will the COVID-19 infection will reach its peak level in USA as well as in India?
It's hard to say because we haven't had the second peak yet. Everyone is expecting the second peak in the fall. So I guess my educated guess would be sometime in the fall. I have heard doctors talk about that the second peak will be worse because there's it's just getting colder and colder, so people are inside more and more. Whereas in the first part of the pandemic, it was getting warmer and warmer, and people were going outside. So I guess my thought for the United States is that sometime in the fall will probably be the worst. I'm not sure about.
Laura, can you tell them which months are you referring to when you say fall?
Oh,
Which are
okay.
the months
So
you are
that would
referring
be
to?
like late September through December. That time period, maybe October, November, would probably be the worst. And then we also have a flu season. So every year we have the flu season start around October, and people are very concerned that the flu will be at the same time as COVID-19, and people might get two infections at the same time, and that will be very, very deadly to especially the elderly. So that's another concern that we have. And then I'm sure have you heard about the swine flu concerns?
Yes.
Swine flu. Yeah, so that's another concern that may also come at the same time. So I don't have a sense of when it would peak in India, though. I haven't heard much talk about that. I do know that the more contact there is between people, the less mask wearing, the more being out in public, the worse things get. And I think you're seeing that now. When you had the lockdown, there was less transmission, and now you're seeing more transmission. So I think,
Yes.
the more people are out there, and the more people are inside, that's when it'll get worse.
So the colder
Okay, next
seasons
question.
might see the second peak. So the next question is, it is said that the number of infection rates will be decreasing by the end of July. Is it really going to happen, or it might increase with time?
Will it increase in July? Is that the question?
No. It is said that the infection rate might decrease at the end of July. Is it really going to happen, or it might increase with time?
Oh, yeah, I haven't heard that. I've heard that there's concern it will just keep rising. I haven't heard anything about it going down in July. Unfortunately, I wish it would.
We all wish that. So I'm moving on to the next question. This is from Shomya Dotto. A pandemic like this is taking a psychological toll. How are people in America coping with this stress?
Yeah, very relevant question.
Yeah, and we are having a tough time, I have to say. There are a lot of people. I write a lot about addiction, and addiction has gotten worse. There's been more people seeking help for addiction and not being able to find it because of closing of treatment centers and things like that. There's been a lot more sales of alcohol. So people just drinking more. So I think there's a lot of bad coping strategies going on, and some just difficulties, like people who had anxiety before or depression are suffering more, and having trouble finding help because you can't go to your therapist's office anymore. You have to do it by Zoom and things like that. There are some ways that people are coping as far as trying to come together on Zoom, for example, and like reaching out to elderly relatives and helping their neighbors, like maybe buying food for a neighbor who has trouble getting out, those kinds of things. So I think those are some coping strategies and ways that people are dealing with it that are good. But I think there's a lot of negative psychological toll going on right now.
Okay, so the next question is from Choitali Pal. This question is similar to the previous one, but if you might emphasize on the psychological issues with elderly people.
Yeah, one of the biggest issues has been loneliness because in the U.S., many elderly people live in congregate care settings like nursing homes, assisted living centers, things like that. So they don't live in joint families for the most part. Some do, but not many at all. So they were lonely to begin with, and then this happened, and now they're scared of going out. They can't get together with other elderly people, and even in the nursing homes where they used to have places they could eat together and watch TV together and things like that, they're not allowing them to do that anymore. So they're having to stay in their room. They can't have visitors because the visitors can bring the disease in. So they're being able to see their family. So loneliness is a big, big problem for the elderly. And so that's leading to some depression, issues with cognitive decline. So, people who have Alzheimer's disease and things like that, it can get worse because they're not having the stimulation of seeing other people and, having conversations and things like that. So yeah, I would say depression and loneliness are the biggest issues for the elderly.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is also on psychological issues. The next question is from Devlina Basu. She's asking, what do you think we need more than ever in this current scenario? And how the mental health issues are being addressed in your country?
Well, I think as far as I'll answer the second part of that first. So how they're being addressed, for the most part, is people are reaching out for support to each other. So they are like friends are trying to reach out to each other on Zoom, that sort of thing, to help themselves with their own mental health. People are also using things like online yoga, meditation, that kind of thing. There also is a lot of remote therapy. So there are therapists you can talk to through Zoom and things like that. The second part of that question, so what do I think needs to happen? I think one really important thing, especially in the United States, is that we think about each other and really sacrifice our own selfish needs for the greater good. We need to have that attitude. Like if just like back in World War II, Americans had to sacrifice. People had to go to war to fight the Nazis and like sacrifice maybe their life for that and for the greater good. And we're at one of those moments where we need to think about each other, to have a global attitude, not a selfish attitude, because that will just keep us in this situation. The more we reach out and think about other people, the closer we get to stopping this. I mean, it's just if we're thinking of other people, we're going to be keeping our masks on, staying 6 feet away from them, not seeing our friends even if we want to, all of those things, and that's how we stop the disease. So we have to think like that.
Thank you. So the next question is from Devlina Basu again. COVID-19 is lasting for so long, and how is it going to affect the social and behavioral shifts? And do you see any technological shift as well in your country?
The technological shift is already happening. Yes, we have seen a huge increase in remote meetings, remote work. Use of things like Zoom or Google Meet or Google Hangouts and all of that stuff. And that has just, we've all realized that we can do a lot with this. In fact, I have not been able to go out and meet with my sources that I normally would for reporting, but I've been more productive than ever because I've been able to talk on Zoom with people and do things remotely very well. And I think the technology has only gotten better, and our business world has really noticed that. And I think it will have a lasting change. All of these things will continue to get better, and that will be a lasting change. And we may see businesses decide they don't want to have offices anymore because they have to pay for them, and people can do very well at home doing their work. So, and then what was the first part? I forgot the first part of that question.
The first part of the question was, do you see any social impact or behavioral change in people?
Oh yeah. So lasting change, you mean? I hope that people do what I was just saying before, that they start thinking about others more, and then realize, that we have to take care of our most vulnerable in our society, which we haven't done a very good job with at all, really ever in our society. So I think we'll hopefully, if we do that, and this, I think, if we learn how to do that, I hope that lasts, that we are able to continue to take care of our most vulnerable people and make sure that they have what they need, because it's not just about, them, it's about the whole. If you're not taking care of them, they'll spread disease to you. So, you just have to be thinking about other people, and hopefully that will become a habit.
Thank you. So the next question is from Shoma Datta again. Yes. What is the status of development of vaccine there? Can we be hopeful of something by the end of this year?
The vaccine, I would say, I have heard some talk about a couple of vaccines that are pretty far along, but I don't think, when people say the end of this year, I don't think they mean that you and I can get a vaccine at the end of this year. I think that means that they have tested something, it looks promising, they're taking it to the final testing phase. That's what they mean by end of the year. I don't think that it's possible to get any vaccine to the vast numbers of people in the U.S. or the rest of the world for at least 18 months. That's very, very fast. So I don't think that we will all have a vaccine by the end of the year, but I do hear that certain vaccines may be, have shown promise by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Raja Raut. In present pandemic situation, what is the status of economy in US in comparison to China right now?
We are having a very difficult time economically. So just lots of unemployment, massive layoffs, furloughs, all sorts of problems like that. We do have some relief. We had some money come out at the beginning, and that is still lasting right now. It's supposed to expire in about 3 weeks, so that's going to be an issue. As far as compared to China, I'm not so aware of where China is standing right now, so I can't compare it in an educated way. But I do think we are doing worse with the pandemic right now than they are, for sure. So at least they're not having to worry about that where we are. So I think they're in a better situation because they're not having to also deal with all of these spikes and problems that we are right now.
Okay, so next I have 2 or 3 similar questions, but I'm going to sum it up. Are women facing any problem in domestic sphere in this situation in your country?
Interesting question. Yeah, certainly there's a lot of concern that women who were facing abusive situations before are now in a worse problem because they are forced to be inside, with their abuser, and that can, and then it's harder to get help when you need it because the police have a lot of other things going on with the protests and everything. So there are some concerns about that. Women who are facing. On the other hand, there is less, sort of outdoor crime going on. So someone getting mugged in the street or something like that is a little less likely because you're not not as many people are going out, especially at the beginning when everyone was locked down. So I guess it depends where your threat comes from. If it's a threat inside the home, and then beyond the threats, a lot of women have had, because the children have been home from school, a lot of the women have had to do their work and take care of the children and clean the house with the children there. And, so it's been very hard to juggle everything for a lot of women. So especially if they have very small children and, who need them all the time, and they're also supposed to be working from home, and and in some places in America, we have very, strict gender rules, or gender roles, I mean, where the women still are supposed to do most of the parenting and things like that. So they are very tired, I would say.
So I have two more questions only. What will be the scenario of journalism job in USA post COVID-19 situation? Will the news portals and televisions will survive, or they will perish away? What do you think?
Well, let me start with newspapers, just because they are suffering terribly right now. I mean, they've had the biggest company in America, which is, I used to work for them, so they have had furloughs every month. They're facing layoffs now. They are very concerned about their stock price is very, very, very low, lowest it's ever been ever. So there's a lot of concern about will newspapers even survive at all. So now, as far as news channels, I think they're doing better, but the local ones are doing worse than the bigger ones. So the bigger the outlets, the better, as far as like the New York Times, the Washington Post, they're doing better than the regional and small newspapers, and the ABC News and things like that are doing better than the tiny little local news stations. So we have seen some bolstering of nonprofit outlets, like Kaiser Health News is doing pretty well, and other outlets like that, like Publica. There's various ones that are doing okay. Now, future, looking forward, it's a big unknown. We just don't know what things are going to look like, and I think a lot depends on what happens with the overall economy. So if our stock market crashes or something like that, I think newspapers won't survive. I think that smaller TV stations will find it very difficult. I think nonprofit outlets will have a tough time in that scenario because they're dependent on how well the overall markets are doing, because that's where some of their money is invested and things like that. So it's not a good scenario. It's not a good looking for a job in anything really, but certainly in journalism, because it was tough before all this happened, and now it's just tougher.
So the last question is how the education system is functioning in this pandemic situation.
So the educational system, right now we're on a summer break, so there's not much going on, but starting in August, some universities are going back early and then ending the year early, and they are meeting in person. And some of their classes will be remote, but most of them will be in person. So that's happening in some places. Then other places, like in California, they're all remote. So everyone will be staying home and learning remotely, like they did for back in March and April. So yeah, and then going forward, we really don't know. Next semester is going to be a big learning experience for a lot of places, and they'll see how it goes, And then as far as kindergarten through 12th grade education, that most of that is going back, again, we'll see what happens. We'll see if there's a lot of outbreaks because of it or what happens. We just don't know until we go through it.
Okay. So Laura, I have another question about President Trump. Would you like to answer that?
I can't give viewpoints, but I can answer just like general things about the news. So,
should I read that question to you?
Yeah, you should. You should.
Okay.
No
So this
Just
is
ask.
from Dr. Rima Roy. She's asking, we have never seen President Trump wearing a mask and speaking at a conference, but he's saying that wearing a mask is mandatory. So what message is he trying to convey?
Well, it's not mandatory here. So it's not mandatory. And the message, no, he would admit that he does not think that it's necessary for him. And he doesn't think it's mandatory. And by law, it's not mandatory. There are some cities and towns and states that have made it mandatory in certain places. So if you live in, I believe, Connecticut, for example, I think if you're inside a store, by law, you need to wear a mask. But that's not true in Kentucky. So we are highly encouraged to wear a mask in the store. But if we don't, we're not going to be breaking any law. And the message from Trump certainly is very confusing for people because they're hearing from some people, they're hearing from someone on his administration that they should wear a mask, but then he's not wearing one, so they don't know what to do. There's very much mixed messaging going on, which is part of the problem because people don't know what to believe.
So I think this is the end of our question answer session. It was wonderful talking to you, Laura. And thank you, Mr. Sujoy Dhar. Now over to Dr. Arnab Banerjee for the end of session.
Thank you, Soma. Thank you, Soma. Thank you, Laura and Sujayda, for wonderful session. I would like to request Dr. Prosenjit Dhar, our IQAC coordinator, to deliver end remark and vote of thanks. Dr. Prosenjit Dhar.
Thank you, Arnab. This is Dr. Prosenjit Dhar from Microbiology Department and Joint Internal Qualified Research Coordinator. At first, I'd like to congratulate Laura for this wonderful talk and the flawless moderation by Vijaygarh that must be mentioned. We, from Laura, came to know about many experiences she's facing in USA in this trying time, and the question answer session was beautiful. So through question answering, we came to know about a lot of things going there, and we can think about some similarities of conditions going here also. There are two similarities definitely, but some problems are here also. So there are some matches and some mismatches, but altogether the situation is gloomy and uncertain in USA, in India also. So in this prime time, we are in a virtual contact, and that is something a pleasure for us, definitely. In this trying time, some people they are discussing with some information, some idea going on around the world. That is great. That may help us to come out of some of the depressions associated with the foundation. So thank you again to all the participants who bearing with us, and thank you to Laura and Sujoy again. Thank you to the head Department of Journalism, Dr. Arnav Banerjee, and Department of Physiology head, Moderator, for this wonderful effort from them to arrange this particular webinar. And thank you to all. Thank you to Principal Madam, who always for always encouraging us for organizing such webinars, and we will do so in near future also. Many such webinars are in the pipeline already. So thank you, Principal Ma'am, for our constant encouragement. And with this small note, this program is now concluded. Thank you very much. So it's to honor now.
Thank you, Prashanjit, and thank you everybody, and thanks also our collaborator, Creative Science Club and India Bloom News Service. Once again, thanks, Laura Ungar and Sujoy Dhar.
Thank you. We really missed this time, so this is good that we could catch up.
Yeah, agreed.
Hopefully next year we all
Hopefully
meet in
hopefully
person, not virtually.
Laura, what's the time now? Laura, what's the time now in America?
Let's see. It's about 11 or so. Let's see. 11:27
So, it's good morning there.
in the morning. Yes.
Have a
Thursday.
great day.
All right,
Okay,
you too.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.